Today on Faith Matters, we have Nathan Theory interviewing our global partner, Natalie Widman, who is home with us from Tenerife, Spain. I'm Dan Jarms.
And I'm Seth Weber.
And you're listening to Faith Matters, a podcast to help update you on matters of Faith Bible Church, as well as equip you in matters of the Christian faith.
Hello, Faith Bible Church. I am here in the studio with Natalie Widman, one of our global partners. Hi, Natalie.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So good to be here with you. Thanks for coming and visiting us all the way from Tenerife. How many miles is it from there to here?
A lot.
Yeah, lots of flights.
Many flights.
Yeah, it was good to have you here in Spokane visiting with us. I'm excited for people at Faith Bible Church to get to know you, to get to know your story and just how God's been so faithful to you. Why don't you start out by telling us about yourself a little bit?
Well, I grew up in California. My dad was in the military, so we moved around a lot. And I did not grow up in a Christian home. I started some bad habits of lying, and I was following my friends. I was very much a slave of what they thought, and I found a lot of my identity in them. When I was in high school, my parents divorced, and I felt lost. My mom became a believer at that time. She started searching spiritually for some truth. And then so she started talking to us about the Lord, my sister and I. And we kind of thought she was a little bit crazy. So at that point, I was ready to graduate from high school and get away from that influence. And she said, when you go to college, you should go to a Bible study once you get there. And I was like, yeah, right. And my first week living in the dorms, I was on a college campus in Southern California. A student knocked on my door and invited me to a women's Bible study. And I remember thinking I didn't want to go, but I thought I'll go once. And then I could tell my mom I went and she'll stop questioning me. She'll stop pushing me. And that first Bible study, they had brownies. I think they were warm. And I thought, wow, this isn't that bad. So I had been lying to a lot of people, and so when they asked me, "Are you a Christian?" I just said, "Yeah." I just faked it. I just faked it. But the ladies were so kind. They invited me to. They were part of a parachurch organization, and they invited me to their Bible study. They invited me to go with them to church, and so I faked it for a year. And my second year in the dorms, I was confronted by one of my roommates who really was a believer. She said, you say you love Jesus, but I don't see it. You say you're a Christian, but you're not. And you need to make a decision. And I was at a conference hearing about the Bible, and they read Matthew 18:28-30. And I thought, wow, I want rest for my soul. That was the first time I had heard a verse and thought, that's what I want. Not a decision based on what my friends thought, but for me, that it wasn't wrong that I was a follower. It was who I was following. And so that opened my eyes. It was New Year's Eve. I was 19 years old. And since after that, I was really growing as a believer. I grew in discipleship. I had a lot of very wonderful people around me. My mom at that time had moved from California to Spokane because she had family in Spokane. She found Faith Bible Church. So when I graduated from college, it was normal, it was a natural thing for me to move to Spokane to be with her. And I got involved with Faith Bible Church right away. And I loved it. Being at Faith was the first time I had seen a church that was elder-led with men that were encouraging me to serve and but they were being very kind and caring for me. So it was very eye-opening for me.
Wow, that's really, really neat to hear your story, how God saved you. So encouraging. And I see the brownie theme coming through in all the ministry you do now, all the brownies and scones and cookies you make.
There's power in food.
Yeah, you sound like a disciple of Lois Belch, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's so cool to hear how God's grace has been working in your life. So you came to Spokane after you graduated. Did you start working right away at the airport, or what were you doing then?
I was a baggage handler. Right after I moved here, I started that job. It was a very fun job. I really enjoyed the friendships that I made at working at the airport, and the hours were very flexible. I could trade with people, so I could be in ministry at church, and it was a good opportunity to learn and grow. I saw that I started in youth ministry, and I saw that these high school girls knew more than I did, and so I was like, I need to step it up a little bit. And I was in the Old Testament survey class, the New Testament survey class, anything I could do to eat up the Word. I saw my need for. I used a lot of my time reading and studying and serving because I wanted to, because I saw what others around me knew, and others were encouraging me to continue serving. So I felt like kind of a sponge.
That's amazing. God really grew you and trained you here through all that experience and teaching. So how did you get connected with missions? Did you start doing short-term teams, or what was your initial connection to missions here at Faith Bible Church?
One of the people in ministry had challenged me at one point. He said, he was kind of going around at the table and saying, in your future, I think that you can grow in this way or this way. And so when he got to me, he said, you should consider being a missionary, like an overseas missionary. I could see your personality doing that. And I thought that was the most random thing that somebody could say. I was like, wow, that's okay. Never thought of that one. And soon after that, the missions pastor here at Faith got up front on a Sunday and said, for the first time in Spokane, there's going to be a Perspectives on the World missions class. And if anybody here has had a heart for missions, I would encourage you to go to it. So I thought, well, maybe I should go. And I went, and it was so interesting, and it was so, I really enjoyed so much about what they were saying. It was about a 5-month class of the history of missions and what the Bible says about missions. And in that class, they emphasized, the church is run by elders, and the church sends the missionary. So it was a real clear, this is just easy to see what happens in missions. And John Smith was here, and he had said, there's short-term teams out there if you guys want to go. And so I thought, okay, this is a good transition. I've done Project Serve, and I've done a lot of community stuff with the church, but I hadn't gone overseas. And others too were saying, you should try it, You like to serve. So that first year, I got sent on the Kazakhstan team and totally loved it. Had no idea I would love it so much. Was really moved after seeing the need for missions in the nations. And came back and was working at the airport still. And then I was like, okay, this is going to be great. The next summer, I'm going to go, let's see where they put me on next year. So the second summer, I went to Pakistan. That was right after you went, the year before, right?
Yeah, so what was that, 2005?
That was 2005, yep.
Yeah.
2004 in Kazakhstan, 2005 in Pakistan. And that's a totally different ministry. But I came back, I totally loved it. So I was like, oh, well, this is really cool. I wonder where I'm going to go next summer. And the missions pastor at that time, a few months later, had come to me and he said, where are you going to go next summer? And I said, well, I don't know. What do you think? I don't know. He goes, Natalie, let me tell you, you're going to go to Venezuela. And so I was like, whoa, how they tell you where you're going to go? I didn't even know this. But in my head, I thought, hey, that's kind of neat that these elders are watching out, let's be purposeful with how we send people. And he said, yeah, you're going to go to Venezuela, and your whole job, the whole time, is to watch Dave and Lois Belch, and you're going to see how they minister and see how they serve. So I said, okay. He said, nobody else on the team knows that that's your job. So I said, okay. And we had a really fun team, a big team that year. And we knew that that was the last team that was going to be sent to Venezuela. So it was a privilege to be able to go. again, that different culture was completely different from Kazakhstan and Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I came back, they said, okay, so now next year you're going to go to Tenerife. And I had never even heard of that. Most people say, where is that? But the church had a plan for how they were going to start a church in Tenerife. And the missions pastor he said, ask your boss at work at the airport to give you a year off. And I said, okay, but he's going to say no. But he said, I want you to ask. So I went and asked him, and he said, 6 months. So when I came back, I said 6 months. So they're like, that's what we're looking for. So I was amazed. Everyone at work was amazed. They're like, how did you do that? But it has been a blessing to see God in the details. So that was when the church started in Tenerife in 2007, summer of 2007. And I was able to be there for the first 6 months.
Tell us how that transpired. How did Faith Bible Church get involved in Dave and Lois Belch specifically in planting a church in Tenerife?
Right. So Dave and Lois had spent many years serving in Venezuela, and their missions agency was closing Venezuela because it had been considered in a good spot spiritually, that there were churches that were growing. And one of the men, Luis, from one of those churches in Venezuela, had moved to Tenerife and was in contact with Dave and asking him, he said, there's a need for Bible teaching churches here on the north side of the island of Tenerife. And so in 2006, there was a team that went to Tenerife, a couple of the pastors here from Faith Bible Church and some of the missionaries and some from Venezuela. And they went to Tenerife and they talked with many of the pastors in Tenerife to confirm and to ask, is there really a need for a Bible teaching church on the north side of the island? And they did say yes. So they were excited about seeing that it really is a need. And as they continued with planning, they decided to send a team from Venezuela and a team from here, from Faith Bible Church, in the summer of 2007 to be there and start an outreach in the community and have the first Sunday service. So we were there for the first Sunday service.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was the team, that first team from here was the Gammons and the Deans and myself.
Mm. So you were there in 2007. The Belches, I think, ended up moving there in 2009, right?
I think so.
And then Julie and I, our family, moved there in 2010.
Yes.
And then you ended up coming after that. And tell us how that transpired. So from 2007 to 2012, when you got there, what happened? How did God lead you to go serve full-time as a missionary in Tenerife?
Well, I was enjoying the summer teams. And so after 2007, I just continued going back because I had those contacts in Tenerife. I started working here at the church as a part-time secretary to the missions pastor. And one of those meetings, Larry Clark was the missions pastor at that time, and he's kind of silly and joking. And in one of those meetings, he said, okay, I want you to call this person, I want you to buy this ticket. And he goes, oh, there was one other thing that we wanted you to do. And I was just taking notes. And he's like, oh, yeah, now I remember it. Pack your bag and move to Tenerife.
Wow.
I was like, what? And it's so funny. It's so funny when I look back because people are like, how did you know? Like, how did you decide to go to Tenerife? And I said, I really didn't. I was so sent. No one even asked me if I wanted to go.
Wow.
Yeah. So in January of 2012, that's when I went to live there.
Were you excited to move, or were you like, well, I guess I have to obey the Lord. I'll go do this even though I don't want to.
Excited. I was very excited because I could see the need for missions, and I was excited about keeping up those relationships, especially with the youth in the church.
Mm. So you were there starting in 2012. What was your focus initially when you got to Tenerife?
Well, I was spending most of the time with the girls that were youth and some of the kids. And I knew that I was available for like English classes and any kind of creating contacts in the community, but my attention was on the youth and spending time with those girls.
Was there a lot of language and culture learning you had to do? Or
yes.
How was that for you?
I'm going to be learning Spanish for the rest of my life. I was learning Spanish and getting to know the culture and getting to know the people. It's always been a learning process. I've made many silly mistakes that are very laughable and end up being good ways to meet people because they're like, oh my goodness, what did you just say?
Oh, that's great. Tell us about some of the challenges that the church planting team had to overcome in the beginning and kind of the early years that you were there and how you saw God help you all with that.
Well, they knew they wanted to do some evangelism in the community because they had seen that in Venezuela and they knew that it worked. And so they were asking for permission to be in the plaza, to just have a time of being able to sing songs and serve the kids and have some crafts, but with a clear gospel message. And the town hall didn't know exactly what that was. I think they only had seen the Catholic Church. So who are these people that were coming from outside, and why would it give them permission to be in the plaza? So for those first couple years, the church had a team there from Venezuela and from Spokane, and they were ready to do this outreach, but they couldn't get the permission to be in the plaza, to be in the middle of Santa Ursula. So those first couple years, they did the Impacto outreach in the church building that they were renting, and in a couple of the other cities that were nearby because they had given permission. And so I think there was some distrust just because there's two groups that didn't know each other.
Yeah. So how has that relationship progressed in terms of the church in Santa Ursula and the community and the government, and how have you all seen God working in that situation?
I think it was like the grace of God and building trust over a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, where the town hall could see like, oh, okay, you guys, and we understand what you're trying to do. Let's try it. See if it works. Ironically, the plaza in Santa Ursula is right in front of the town hall, so they are looking directly at what was going on. So once they saw that it wasn't a threat, and that parents liked to go and attend with their kids, and that it was very easy to go and be a part of what's going on, and they were giving away coffee and free dessert. What's it? The power of food.
Yeah.
And that people in the community desired to be there. Then after that, it hadn't been an issue.
Yeah. Tell us that you've had a front row seat and been very directly involved with the church being established and growing. Tell us how you've seen the church in Santa Ursula grow over the last 11, 12 years.
It's exciting to watch because each person that you see that's a believer is a miracle, and it's just the grace of God that has touched their lives. When you remember that and you see like this is amazing that anyone here are believers, it's inspiring to be bold with the gospel and to think like, wow, this is an adventure, because it's like we don't know who God's going to choose, and we have this privilege to be on the front lines and seeing what God's plan is. It's been great to see, in the beginning, it was we were just trying to invite people to church. And so now, a few years later, to see a men's ministry and a women's ministry and a youth ministry. Just this last year, even an older youth ministry and a younger youth ministry and a couples Bible study. And it's been a blessing to see what God's doing in each life and to see them step up in desiring to serve and with their own ideas of how we can encourage one another to obey the Lord. But when it comes from them, it's really exciting to see.
Yeah, tell us some of those specific stories, that maybe 1 or 2 examples of how you've seen God's grace at work in people's lives over the last years.
There was one time, this was about 6 years ago, there was a girl in the church named Josemari, and she had been studying the Bible with a lady in the church years before, and she had a planted seed of like, oh, maybe this is true. She was living with her boyfriend, and they had been living together for a few years. And she and I had started a Bible study, and she got to the point where she said, Natalie, I think that I need to be a believer. I think I need to take this seriously, and I think I need to break up with my boyfriend. And so I was excited to see her desire to step out in obedience. And a couple weeks later, she had said, my sister who's living in the south side of the island, is being really rebellious, and my mom is going to send her to live with me for a little bit. So Josemari shared the gospel with her, and she accepted the Lord right away. And so Josemari came to me and she said, I've shared the gospel with my boyfriend so many times, and he does not want to know the Lord. But I share it once with my sister, and she said she wants to follow the Lord. And I said, yeah, we're just going to continue. We're just going to continue praying. And so she had just come to the point where she's like, okay, I'm gonna break up with him. And I was maybe the only one who knew that. And we went to go find him, and he was going to meet us somewhere. He was coming to pick her up. And while he was waiting for us, he was outside the church building. One of the men in the church shared the gospel with him, and he accepted the Lord. And he showed fruit right away, and they stopped living together, and then he asked her to marry her, and then they got married. And so it was cool. It was just all happened in just a few months. She became a believer, her sister became a believer, and then her boyfriend became a believer. And to see her husband in the plaza the summer after in Impacto serving, where before he was in the corner of the plaza with, doing drugs with some of his friends. He was there serving the Lord while his friends were in the corner. And it was such a drastic turnaround of seeing the grace of God in his life. So, and they're still part of the church. All three of them are serving. So it has been a blessing to see.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then 5 years ago, maybe, we were in the Impacto.
When you say Impacto, tell people what that is.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Impacto is like an outreach that Dave and Lois had started using in Venezuela. They were using it to invite kids and families to a day camp where they would hear the gospel message and hear Bible stories and do crafts and sing songs and play sports. And so it was just a way to have an excuse to serve the community and slip in some Bible truth.
Mm-hmm.
And the first day of one of the Impactos in Tenerife, it started to rain, and we had the sound equipment there. So in the middle of, you kind of thinking you want to be outside, you want to be reaching people. We didn't know who was going to come. And I was waiting for the elders to make a final decision if what we're going to do. And they said, okay, let's go back to the church building for right now, and we'll just invite everybody to come with us. In my head, I thought, no one except for the church people are going to come. But Diana, one of the older youth, she yelled really loud, like, everybody come, let's go down to the church building. And there was a girl, one of the ladies, Yamilet, who had a little girl who was 4, and she followed us down there. And by the end of the week, had become a believer. And
wow.
She had invited her husband to come too. And he said he's like, they're giving away free desserts. He's like, they're just giving it away. That was impactful for him. And he started meeting with one of the elders and his wife, Jorge and Adriana. And a few months later, he became a believer. So now this year, they're training him to preach. And he's preached a few times, and he's studying the word. He's studying how to accurately study the word with one of the other elders. And that is working with accounting with the church and helping out with administration. So it's been neat because they see the grace of God in their lives, and they're very quick to talk about how different they were before they knew Christ.
That's so encouraging. So in 2012, you went to Tenerife. At the same time, Alcides and Selima Velasquez, who were serving the church in Guatire, Venezuela, moves to Tenerife. And they eventually, along with the Albrechts, who had been in Santa Ursula, started planting a church in Adeje in the south.
Mm-hmm. So in August of 2015.
Okay. So there were a newer church plant that started in 2015 in Adeje in the south, and the Santa Ursula church plant has continued on. In 2017, Dave and Lois Belch left Tenerife, right?
Yes, I think
they came back to Spokane, not really to retire, although that's what officially they said they were doing.
I think they're busier than they
they keep on doing so much ministry, but including in Tenerife and lots of other places. Tell us about the leadership now what happened in 2017 and kind of what's been going on in terms of establishing the church. We're in a lot of ways talking about training up elders and raising up leadership for the church, as well as equipping the whole church. So what have you seen God doing in terms of the leadership there in Santa Ursula since Dave and Lois left in 2017?
It's been encouraging to see how they have, they're looking ahead. They're looking at where else can there be a church. They're looking at how can we choose men in the church to train up, and they're purposely meeting with them and studying with them. And David, one of the elders in Santa Ursula, regularly visits a day in the south. It's only about an hour away, to encourage them and meet with those guys. So there's 3 elders in the north and the 3 elders in the south. And they are very purposeful in encouraging one another. And they're going through books, they're going through studies, they're meeting regularly, they're praying. You've gone a few times to encourage them. Dave and Lois have gone a few times to encourage. And it's like Paul returning to the churches to encourage. So they are excited to see how they can be used, and they're looking for areas in Tenerife and in Spain for ideas for where churches could be planted. And they're encouraging other pastors as well to cling to the word and see the word as a sufficient.
Yeah, as what's sufficient. Yeah, God's word, not human strategy or philosophy or some technique of church growth. It's really faithfully living God's word and teaching God's word and discipling others to do the same. Yeah, it's been cool to see from a distance just how God's used the elders in the church in Santa Ursula and elders in the church in Deje, as well as Dave and Lois, to encourage lots of churches around Tenerife and in the other Canary Islands, as well as in mainland Spain, towards faithful ministry. Yeah, and you've been helping facilitate that, and you've been kind of the super deaconess helping all this ministry happen, facilitating and really partnering well with the elders. I love seeing like you're having people over on Sundays with one of the elder families to facilitate that shepherding and hospitality and just being a huge blessing that way. But tell us more about what are some of the weekly activities you're involved in as people think about you serving in Tenerife and Santa Ursula. What does it look like these days for you as far as your kind of normal routines and activities you're doing for ministry?
Right. I'm trying to also encourage some of the ladies that are leading. There's 2 ladies that are leading the women's Bible study. So I meet with them, encourage them, but they're taken off. So it's great to see them go with their plan and to be at that weekly women's study and to see them encourage one another and, like you said before, create that culture of discipleship and purposeful conversation where they can see, like, let's be real and not surfacey. Let's really truly care for one another. We have a weekly youth meeting. We're all together, and then we split up for the older youth and the younger youth, just because they'll talk more if they're with their same age. Mm-hmm. And that has required the guys to prepare a little bit more, but it's been great to see them step up to be available. And then there's a discipleship with the younger girls that are 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. So I've been working with a couple of the older youth and just showing them, like, this is what life on life looks like, and just praying for them and seeing they definitely do have this interest, and they're the ones that had seen, like, we need to be investing in these girls and praying for them and being in the Word. And so last year we went through the book of James, and now they're excited to be teaching as these girls go through. I'm not sure I think they're going to go through Proverbs this year, but to see their hearts for investing and for reaching out to these girls and their families to encourage them with the Word and show them that there's a different way to live. There's a monthly men's breakfast and study that David is leading, and they eat. There's food there too. Every once in a while there's a potluck after church to create some fellowship. There are monthly workshops. They call them theology workshops on a Saturday afternoon, and it coincides with the kids club so that encourages them, like, bring your kids. They can go to the kids club, and while the kids learn about the Bible, and you guys can be studying theology together with the other adults. So it's, along with all of the casual stuff, like let's go on a hike, or let's go eat, or let's go drink coffee. It's been encouraging to see the amount of people who desire to be together. They can see, there's definitely a fellowship that's not the same as what's happening in the world, and they definitely cling to one another when they have prayer requests, like, help me get through this, help me have eternal eyes and look to the cross in the middle of this trial. And yeah, it has been good.
That's great. Tell us about the kind of the status of the churches in Santa Ursula y Nedeje, as far as how many people are coming, how many people are members.
Yeah, in Santa Ursula there are about 80 members, but with everyone together and their kids, there's 110, 120 that are on a Sunday morning. Just last Sunday, they started another membership class, and David was telling me that there's 9 people signed up for that. So
wow,
they were excited. They were encouraged. In Nedeje, they have 30 to 40 on a Sunday morning. I guess I'm not sure about how many members they have. But just a couple of weeks ago, they had another baptism. They have the baptisms in the ocean. They go down to the beach, and it's been a good time of fellowship and lunch picnic. And 3 others just got baptized. So it's encouraging. And
that's great.
Yeah.
They definitely have a better baptistry than we do here.
Yeah, it's more exciting.
The waves sometimes just do it for you. You don't have to dip the person down.
It's a little crazy.
Yeah, that's good. Tell us about what you like to do for fun. So it sounds like you like to hang out with people a lot. But what else do you like to do for fun?
I do like to hang out with people. I'll read, or I'll find a place that like a new coffee shop. I think that's the American in me. Like, I like to sit in a coffee shop and read, or journal if I need to, just recharge. I think, and it's funny because for them, it's like, I'm going to go, it's a social thing. I'll go to, you go to coffee to talk with somebody. So like, I just went by myself, or hang out with people. I'll hang out with people.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Tell us how we can be praying for you, and also how can we be praying for the church in Santa Ursula that you're working with.
That I would find my strength in the Lord, that I would prioritize. It's easy to fill your time, and there's things that are good, and there's things that are better, and there's things that are best. I want to choose what is best and be where the Lord wants me to be. So discernment and wisdom in who I'm spending time with. Of course, the focus is to make disciples who are making disciples. So those, where the attention is going to be on people who are going to turn around and serve others. So yeah, wisdom on who those people are. For the church, I think that there's a lot of prayer requests that would be similar to all other churches. It'd be great if men are, stepping up to be servant leaders, and that the women continue this culture of discipleship, that there's priority in the church meetings and in the church events, and that there's a desire with integrity to be serving one another, and that where the culture and the Bible seem to be clashing, that they would choose what the Bible says and step out in faith and obey the Lord. So I know that the elders are thinking about church planting in the future and where that would be on the island, so wisdom and discernment for them, and that they would continue in unity and humility in serving and leading the church.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for taking time to talk with us today. So thank you for faithfully serving the Lord and being an extension of Faith Bible Church in Tenerife. We're very thankful for you.
It's a privilege. Faith Bible Church is a wonderful church.
Thank you, Natalie.
It is always a joy to hear from Natalie Widman. She is so energetic and so fun, and so self-deprecating. She's the best.
And may or may not have worn silly hats with Nathan during part of this interview.
It wouldn't be Natalie Widman if we didn't have silly hats. If you want to follow Natalie more, you can go to our website, fbchurch.org/partners, and we have our global partners, and she'll be on the list. It's a great way for you to know all of our global partners. You can click on hers, get more information. We've followed her newsletter for years as a supporter of hers. So if you want to do that, please go on our website, fbchurch.org/partners. Any other questions, of course, you can reach out to info@fbchurch.org and you could follow up more.